Have you ever felt happy but somehow not whole, like joy was present, but something deeper was missing? It's a quiet truth many of us carry. Happiness can light up a moment, but it doesn't always settle the soul. Welcome to Life Lessons, a space where we gently explore the timeless wisdom of Buddhist teachings, not to instruct, but to reflect together. In this video, we'll walk side by side through a question that touches us all. Is inner peace more valuable than happiness? And if so, how do we begin to cultivate it? This isn't about fixing ourselves or chasing perfection. It's about pausing long enough to hear what's already within us. Buddhist wisdom reminds us that peace isn't something we find, it's something we remember. And sometimes, all it takes is a quiet moment, a shared story, or a gentle truth to bring us back to that place. If this message resonates with you even just a little, consider giving this video a like or sharing it with someone who might need. It helps the channel grow, but more importantly, it helps these reflections reach hearts that may be quietly waiting. Let's begin. Part 1. Happiness is an emotion. Peace is a state of being. Have we ever stopped to ask ourselves, what is happiness? Really, we chase it, celebrate it, even measure our lives by it. But when the noise fades and the day ends, how often do we feel truly at peace? For many of us, happiness has become the goal. We associate it with success, love, achievement, and comfort. And while these things can bring joy, they are often fleeting, dependent on circumstances that shift and change. A compliment, a vacation, a good meal, a moment of laughter. These are beautiful, but they pass. And when they do, we're left wondering, was that enough? According to Buddhist teachings, happiness is an emotion, and like all emotions, it rises and falls. It's reactive, tied to the external. But peace is a spiritual state, a deeper, quieter presence that doesn't rely on what's happening around us. It's not about feeling good, it's about feeling whole. The Buddha once said, "There is no path to peace. Peace is the path." This teaching isn't just poetic, it's radical. It invites us to stop chasing and start being, to shift our focus from what we want to feel to how we want to live. Let's pause here and imagine a moment from everyday life. A man named David, in his late 50s, sits alone in his living room. The house is quiet. His children are grown. His career stable. He has everything he thought he needed to be happy. But something feels missing. Not dramatic, just hollow. He scrolls through his phone, watches a show, pours a drink. But the ache remains. David isn't sad. He's simply unanchored. And this is where Buddhist wisdom gently enters, not to fix, but to illuminate. It suggests that what David is missing isn't more happiness. It's inner peace, the kind that comes not from doing more, but from being more present, from accepting what is, rather than resisting it. Peace begins with acceptance, not the passive kind, but the courageous kind, the kind that says, "This is my life, these are my thoughts, this is my heart." When we stop trying to control every emotion, every outcome, we begin to soften, we begin to listen. And in that listening, we find clarity. This doesn't mean we stop feeling. Emotions are part of being human. But when we anchor ourselves in peace, we're no longer tossed around by every wave. We can feel joy without clinging to it. We can feel pain without being consumed by it. We can live with openness. Peace is not the absence of emotion. It's the spaciousness to hold emotion with compassion. It's the quiet strength to sit with discomfort, to breathe through uncertainty, to trust that we are enough even when life feels incomplete. Let's return to David. One evening, he hears the phrase, "Peace is the path." It lingers, not because it solves anything, but because it speaks to something he's forgotten. He begins to sit in silence each morning, just 10 minutes, no goals, no expectations. Slowly he starts to notice his thoughts, his breath, the way light moves across the wall, and something shifts, not dramatically, but gently. David isn't happier, he's more present, and in that presence, he begins to feel a kind of peace that doesn't depend on anything outside of him. This is the heart of Buddhist practice, not to escape life, but to embrace it fully, to live with awareness, with kindness, with depth, to understand that emotional highs are beautiful, but spiritual steadiness is what carries us through. We all carry stories like David's, moments of quiet ache, questions we've never asked, longings we've never named, and maybe, just maybe, this teaching is the invitation we've been waiting for, not to chase more, but to return to ourselves. So let us walk this path together, not toward happiness, but toward peace, not toward perfection, but toward presence. Because when we begin to live from that place, we don't just feel better, we feel real. And that, perhaps, is the deepest kind of joy. Part 2. Why happiness can't be sustained. All had moments that felt perfect. A warm afternoon with loved ones, a long-awaited achievement, a spontaneous laugh that made everything feel light. In those moments, happiness wraps around us like sunlight. But then, almost without warning, it fades. The day ends. The applause quiets. The laughter stops. And we're left wondering, why didn't it last? In Buddhist teachings, this question is not a mystery, it's a truth. Happiness, as we often define it, is impermanent. It's an emotion, and emotions by nature are transient. They arise, peak, and dissolve. The problem isn't that happiness fades. The problem is that we expect it to stay. When we tie our sense of well-being to external conditions, success, praise, comfortably, live in a constant state of waiting for the next good thing, the next validation, the next escape from discomfort. And in that waiting, we suffer. The Buddha taught that attachment to emotion is the root of suffering, not because emotions are bad, but because clinging to them creates tension. We want joy to last forever. We want pain to disappear instantly. But life doesn't work that way. Everything changes. And when we resist that truth, we create our own suffering. Let's pause with a story. There's a woman named Karen. She's in her early 60s, retired, with grown children and a quiet home. She remembers the joy of raising her kids, the thrill of her career, the warmth of family holidays. But now, she feels a strange emptiness. Not because life is bad, but because the highs she once lived for are no longer there. Karen tries to recreate those moments. She plans trips, hosts dinners, fills her calendar. But the joy feels thinner now, less vibrant. And she begins to feel guilty. Shouldn't I be happy? She wonders. I have so much. This is where Buddhist wisdom offers a gentle shift. It tells us, happiness is not the goal. Presence is. When we stop chasing the emotion and start embracing the moment, something opens. We begin to see that peace doesn't depend on excitement. It depends on acceptance. Karen begins to sit quietly each morning. She watches the trees outside her window. She listens to the silence. She feels the ache in her chest, not as a problem, but as part of her story. And slowly, she begins to soften. She's not chasing joy anymore. She's learning to be with what is. This is the heart of Buddhist practice. Non-attachment, not detachment, not indifference, but the ability to hold life gently, to love without clinging, to feel without grasping, to live without needing every moment to be extraordinary. When we cling to happiness, we fear its loss. When we accept its impermanence, we find peace. This doesn't mean we stop enjoying life. It means we stop depending on enjoyment to define our worth. We begin to trust that even in quiet, even in sadness, even in uncertainty, there is something sacred. Let's return to Karen. One evening, she sits with an old photo album. She smiles at the memories, but she doesn't ache for them to return. She feels gratitude, not longing. And in that moment, she realizes, I don't need to be happy to be whole. This is the shift, from chasing emotion to cultivating awareness, from needing more to embracing enough. From fearing change to flowing with it. We all carry stories like Karen's, moments we wish could last, feelings we try to hold on to. But maybe what we need isn't more happiness, it's more space. Space to feel, space to breathe, space to let life move through us without resistance. So let us walk this path together, not toward constant joy, but toward steady presence, not toward emotional highs, but toward spiritual depth. Because when we stop clinging, we start living. And in that living, we find something even more beautiful than happiness. We find peace. Part 3. The nature of inner peace. There's a quiet kind of strength in simply sitting with ourselves, not fixing, not fleeing, just being. And yet, for many of us, this is the hardest thing to do. We live in a world that teaches us to move quickly, to stay busy, to avoid discomfort. When sadness arises, we distract. When anger flares, we suppress. When loneliness creeps in, we reach for noise. But Buddhist teachings invite us to do something radically different, to stop running, to turn inward, to sit with what is. Inner peace, in the Buddhist tradition, is not the absence of pain. It's the presence of awareness. It's the ability to be with our emotions, not as enemies, but as messengers. When we stop resisting what we feel, we begin to understand who we are. The Buddha described this as nirvana in daily life. Not a distant, mystical state, but a grounded, living truth. A moment of stillness in the middle of chaos. A breath of clarity in the fog of emotion. A softening of the heart, even when it's breaking. Let's imagine someone named Michael. He's in his late 50s, recently divorced, living alone for the first time in decades. The silence in his home is deafening. He fills it with television, errands, phone calls, anything to avoid the ache. But one evening, exhausted, he turns everything off. He sits in the quiet, and for the first time, he lets the sadness speak. It's not easy. The tears come, the memories flood, but something else arrives too. A sense of presence, a feeling that is no longer fragmented. He's whole, even in pain. This is the nature of inner peace. It doesn't erase our suffering. It holds it with compassion. It says, this, too, belongs, and in that belonging we begin to heal. Buddhist practice teaches us to cultivate mindfulness, the art of being fully present with whatever arises, not judging, not fixing, just noticing. When we do this, we begin to see the patterns of our mind, the stories we tell, the fears we carry, the hopes we cling to, and slowly we begin to loosen our grip. Peace is not passive. It's active, alive, and deeply engaged. It asks us to show up not just when things are easy, but especially when they're hard. It invites us to sit with grief, with anger, with longing, and to meet them with kindness. Let's return to Michael. He begins a daily practice of sitting in silence. Some days are heavy, some are light, but over time, he notices something. The emotions still come, but they no longer control him. He feels them, honors them, and lets them pass. And in their passing, he finds space. Space to breathe. Space to live. This is nirvana in daily life. Not a life without pain, but a life with presence. Not a heart without wounds, but a heart that stays open. We all carry pain, losses we haven't spoken of, regrets we've buried, questions we've never dared to ask. And maybe, just maybe, this teaching is the permission we've been waiting for, to stop pretending, to stop performing, and to simply be. Inner peace isn't something we earn, it's something we remember. It's the quiet truth beneath all the noise. And when we touch it, even for a moment, we begin to see that we are not broken, we are not lost, we are simply human. So let us walk this path together. Let us sit with ourselves, not to escape, but to embrace. Let us listen, not to fix, but to understand. Because in that listening, we find something deeper than happiness. We find peace, and in that peace, we find ourselves. Part 4. How acceptance leads to peace. There's a quiet kind of suffering that many of us carry, not from what life has done to us, but from what we've refused to accept. We resist, we push back, we tell ourselves things should be different, that we should be different, and in that resistance, we lose something precious, our peace. In Buddhist teachings, acceptance is not weakness, it's not giving up, it's not resignation, it's the courageous act of letting go of resistance. It's the moment we stop fighting reality and begin to meet it with compassion. We often confuse acceptance with defeat. But the truth is, acceptance is the beginning of freedom. When we accept ourselves, not just the polished parts, but the messy, complicated, aching parts, we begin to soften. We begin to breathe. We begin to live. Let's imagine someone named Susan. She's in her mid-50s, a mother, a caregiver, a woman who spent most of her life putting others first. She's strong, dependable, admired, but inside, she feels tired. Not just physically, but emotionally. She carries regrets. She questions her worth. She wonders if she's done enough. Susan tries to push through. She tells herself to be grateful, to stay positive, but the more she resists her feelings, the heavier they become. Until one day, she hears a teaching. Peace begins when resistance ends. It's simple, but it lands deep. Susan begins to sit with her feelings, not to fix them, but to acknowledge them. She lets the sadness speak. She lets the guilt breathe. She lets the fear be seen. And in that seeing, something shifts. She's no longer trapped in the cycle of expectation and disappointment. She's no longer chasing an ideal version of herself. She's simply present with what is, with who she is. This is the power of radical acceptance. It doesn't erase pain. It transforms our relationship to it. It allows us to say, this is part of me, and I can still be whole. Buddhist practice teaches that suffering arises not from pain itself, but from our resistance to pain. When we cling to how things should be, we suffer. When we accept how things are, we find peace. This doesn't mean we stop growing. It means we grow from a place of compassion, not criticism. We stop trying to become someone else and start honoring who we already are. Let's return to Susan. She begins to notice the small moments, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of birds, the quiet joy of being alone. She's not chasing happiness, she's cultivating peace. And that peace comes not from changing her life, but from changing how she relates to it. We all carry stories like Susan's. We've all felt the weight of unmet expectations, the sting of self-judgment, the ache of wishing things were different. But maybe, just maybe, this teaching is the invitation we've been waiting for, to stop resisting and to start accepting. Acceptance is not passive, it's active, it's alive. It's the moment we choose to meet ourselves with kindness, to say, I am enough, even in my imperfection. To trust that peace doesn't come from fixing everything, it comes from embracing everything. When we accept ourselves, we stop needing the world to validate us. We stop measuring our worth by outcomes. We begin to live from the inside out. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Peace is not something we earn, it's something we allow. And it begins the moment we stop resisting who we are. So let us walk this path together. Let us sit with our stories not to rewrite them, but to honor them. Let us breathe into our pain not to escape it, but to understand it. Let us accept ourselves not as a final destination, but as a daily practice. Because in that acceptance, we find something deeper than relief. We find peace. And in that peace, we find the freedom to be fully, beautifully human. We find peace. Part 5. Living a peaceful life in a chaotic world. The world feels louder than ever. News cycles spin endlessly. Expectations pile up. Our calendars overflow. And somewhere in the rush, many of us begin to feel like we're losing touch not just with others, but with ourselves. In Buddhist teachings, peace isn't found by escaping the world. It's found by learning how to be fully present within it. Mindful living is the practice of meeting each moment with awareness, even when that moment is difficult. It's the art of staying grounded while everything around us shifts. We often think of peace as a destination, a quiet cabin, a retreat, a break from reality. But the Buddha reminds us, peace is not a place we arrive, it's the way we walk. Let's imagine someone named Thomas. He's in his early 60s, recently retired, and overwhelmed by the pace of change. Technology moves faster than he can follow. The world feels unfamiliar. He misses the simplicity of earlier years. And beneath it all, he feels anxious like he's falling behind in a race he never signed up for. Thomas tries to keep up. He downloads apps, joins groups, stays busy. But the more he does, the more disconnected he feels. Until one day, he hears a teaching about mindfulness, the practice of simply being with what is. He begins small. One morning, he sits with his coffee and listens to the birds. He notices the warmth of the mug in his hands, the way the light hits the table, the rhythm of his breath. And in that moment, something shifts. He's not trying to control the world. He's simply present in it. This is the essence of living peacefully in a chaotic world. It's not about changing everything around us. It's about changing how we relate to it. When we live mindfully, we stop reacting and start responding. We stop rushing and start noticing. We stop fearing and start trusting. Buddhist practice teaches us that chaos is not the enemy. It's part of life. What causes suffering is our resistance to it. When we try to control what's uncontrollable, we exhaust ourselves. But when we learn to flow with change, we find steadiness. Let's return to Thomas. He begins to build small rituals into his day. A quiet walk, a few minutes of breathing, a moment of gratitude before sleep. These aren't dramatic changes, but they anchor him. They remind him that peace isn't far away, it's always available. If he's willing to pause. We all live in a world that demands more than we can give. We're pulled in every direction. We're told to be faster, better, stronger. But Buddhist wisdom offers a different path. It says, slow down, come home to yourself. Let each moment be enough. This isn't easy. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes the willingness to feel what we've been avoiding. But in that practice, we begin to reclaim something sacred, our presence. Peace doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we care deeply, without losing ourselves. It means we show up fully, without being consumed. It means we live with open hearts. Even when the world feels closed, let us walk this path together. Let us breathe through the noise. Let us listen beneath the chaos. Let us trust that even in uncertainty, we can find clarity, because peace isn't something we wait for. It's something we choose moment by moment, breath by breath. And in that choosing, we don't just survive the world. We begin to live in it with grace, with courage, with compassion, and most of all with peace. Conclusion: as we come to the end of this reflection, let's take a quiet breath together. Throughout this video, we've explored a truth that often goes unnoticed. Happiness is fleeting, but inner peace can be cultivated day by day, moment by moment. We began by understanding that happiness is an emotion, often tied to external conditions. It comes and goes, like weather. But peace is a spiritual state, rooted in acceptance, awareness, and compassion. We saw how chasing happiness can leave us feeling empty, while embracing the present allows us to feel whole. We learned that peace isn't the absence of pain, but the ability to sit with ourselves, even in discomfort. We discovered that radical acceptance of our flaws, our past, our emotions, is the doorway to freedom. And finally, we explored how to live peacefully in a chaotic world, not by escaping it, but by walking through it mindfully. These teachings aren't just ideas, they're invitations to pause, to listen, to live with intention. When we choose to live with mindfulness, compassion, and acceptance, we don't just find peace, we become a source of peace for others. And in a world that's often overwhelmed, that's a gift worth sharing. If this message touched something in you, we invite you to continue this journey with us. Give this video a like, leave a comment with your thoughts or reflections, and share it with someone who might need it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Life Lessons so we can keep walking this path together. Because peace isn't a destination, it's how we choose to live, and every step matters.